Hello and welcome to Sweetcast. I'm Clint, and I couldn't go through. I had a really important video that I was planning, I'd been working on, but I couldn't let it go by without making a video about Stan Lee. So first off, Stan Lee, to me, this is how I always pictured him. He's just a really fun-loving guy. He looked like I never had the opportunity to meet him or anything or get anything signed by him. But he always was one of the people I would have loved to have met, because he just seems like so fun, just a fun person. Yeah, and I think he worked really hard at that. But yeah, it was inspiring to me, and it was really great. Also, for me personally, I got into comic books a little bit older than most people. I want to say 20 when I read this comic book, which is The Amazing Spider-Man #1, and it was just a little reprint that I got from a dollar store or something like that. It was just, or a Walmart maybe. It was just hanging around, and I thought, hey, this looked like fun. So I read it, and it was just a lot of fun. I mean, it reflected the old-timey kind of way people used to talk, and the excitement and sort of over-the-top dialogue. It was really fun. Even though I wasn't a child, I was young, but I wasn't a child. And even though, it was this had been out for a very, very long time. It was let's see, so it would have been in the early 2000s, I guess. I'm 32, so yeah, some early 2000s that I read it. But it was still enjoyable for me, and it actually got me into comics. And so, yeah, Stan Lee is the man. So rather than this being a day where, he passed on and it sort of unites comic book lovers and creators alike, and don't get me wrong, it did to some degree, but it seems like there are a lot of people that seem to be confused about Stan Lee and his life. You'll have some people, of course, you'll see Stan's soapbox that's been making the rounds, and he spoke out against bigotry and racism. And you have to realize that Stan Lee lived a very long life. He lived through some, pretty intense racism and bigotry. He spoke the truth, and he stood up against bigotry and racism. The difference here is, of course, our favorite cosplayer here is going to claim that Stan Lee was a social justice warrior. So you'll see that on one side and sort of reframing who Stan Lee was. And to me, I'd say he was for justice, not social justice. And then you'll have others. I saw this on Sargon of Akkad. He did a video on it. But if you search for Stan Lee problematic in Twitter, you'll see a lot of people who are very conflicted about Stan Lee. Stan Lee might have been problematic, but he gave us our favorite characters. We get it, Susan. Racism and homophobia have no effect over you. Shut up. Okay, so they're disparaging his name. Some people are praising. Many people are praising him. I think most people are. Most decent people. I mean, he lived a long life. No one's perfect, and he deserves praise. By all accounts, he was a good guy. But people are really conflicted. Some are claiming that was something he wasn't. He was some kind of extreme social justice advocate. And some people are claiming that he was just an awful bigot himself. And you're not seeing this among the Comicsgate community, I can tell you that. So you read through some of these. Stan Lee was problematic, but he also helped create characters that literally saved my life and helped me find pride in my body after I was sexually assaulted. Wow. So no, I am not excusing the things he's done, but yes, I am grateful for the work he's done. It kind of makes me wonder as I read through some of that stuff, when I die, no, I mean, I'm not perfect. No, nobody is perfect. And so, I mean, it's not like he did something horrible. He just had some opinions that were a little different, or they went against this extreme social justice narrative. And honestly, I don't think they're different at all. And so I want to get to that, but first I'm going to do my my free ad for the video. And really, I'm just going to point you to IndieGoGo.com. If you go to IndieGoGo.com and then you go to Explore, there are a lot of titles in here of, Little Girl Lethal is one that I've seen making the rounds a lot. I haven't read any of these comics. I can't speak to the quality of any of them. However, I would suggest that you go and look at them. It is an alternative to the current Marvel and DC choices. Bigfoot Bill. Yeah, I know that's Doug TenNaples' book. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of books here to check out. I would suggest going there and support indie creators. So who was Stan Lee really? Well, in his statement here that has been circulating the internet, he says, "Bigotry and racism are among the deadliest social ills plaguing the world today. A story without a message is like a man without a soul." So something I want to point out is that Stan Lee had great messages in his comics. There were morals in his comics, and he didn't beat you over the head with those morals. They didn't break character to tell you how you should act. Spider-Man, in any of the comics that Stan Lee wrote about Spider-Man never lectured me. He showed me. He didn't tell me. He showed me how to be a good hero, how to have morals. That is how you put a message in a comic. You show them, you don't tell them. That is basic writing. And Stan Lee understood that. Yeah, and so we go on, and this is the problem. This article here. Stan Lee said that Spider-Man should stay white and straight. And this is why, people on Twitter are so conflicted, because they think that he was some kind of evil person. They can't see why he would be against bigotry and racism, but also say that his character should still look and act like the original character. And this is honestly what we've all been telling creators all along, what we've been telling Marvel and DC all along, and they don't seem to understand. Stan Lee understood it. He said, "I wouldn't mind if Peter Parker had originally been black, a Latino, an Indian, or anything else, that he stay that way," he said, "but we originally made him white. I don't see any reason to change that." Yeah, Stan Lee got it. You don't change characters just so that they fit the times. They're timeless characters. Create new characters, write great characters, and they'll stand the test of time. One more thing, Matt Murdock, Daredevil. What I loved, I watched, I think it was a documentary, it was quite a while ago, and Stan Lee was talking a little bit about Matt Murdock being blind, and how, there's a superhero with a disability, but it was almost in a roundabout way that was his superpower. So it was a really interesting concept to me. He tried to make characters that had flaws. They were flawed characters. They all had problems. They weren't perfect. And that's what Stan Lee did. And that's what he brought to superhero comics that didn't exist before. And we take that for granted. Spider-Man was a very complicated character. He had all sorts of issues that he was dealing with on a personal level, on a social level. And that's what makes him such an interesting character. So yeah, trying to make characters perfect so they don't have these kinds of flaws or struggles, that makes it's just a boring story. Stan Lee understood that. So yeah, I'm not going to speak for Stan Lee. I'm not going to try and change history. He did, I think, a lot of good things in his life. He created a bunch of characters and a bunch of stories that have affected a lot of people. And so I salute you, Stan Lee. Thank you. For our writing assignment for the day, we're going to get Stan Lee here. I want to say this is from a cameo from Spider-Man, probably back from the Tobey Maguire days. And Stan Lee, is looking out the window, and let's pretend he's looking down on the situation now. Write some dialogue. Tell me what is it? Add a word balloon. What is Stan Lee saying? Write it down in the comments below, or I'll post this to Twitter, and you're welcome to write it there as well. If you have any suggestions for future videos, let me know in the comments. Really appreciate all the support from all you early subscribers. It's been very, very helpful, and really excited for the momentum to move forward. So if you haven't yet, subscribe, and I will see you next time.